I'm hoping the audio quality is okay for this because I might end up having to use it. Hello, it's Thursday, and this week we're going to continue the D&D series, and I'm going to show you how to make this beholder. A written version of this pattern will be available in my Etsy as well as sent out to all of my patrons, so if you're interested in either of those, I will leave a link in the description down below. Alright, let's get into tools and materials.
Alright, so let's talk tools and materials. So for today's pattern, you're going to need 8 ply, 100% acrylic yarn in 4 different colours. So you're going to need a main body colour. I'm going to use a bright pink for that. You're going to need an iris colour. I'm going to use yellow for that. You're going to need some black for inside the mouth and for the pupils, and you're going to need some white for the whites of the eyes and your teeth. You're also going to need something to put some weight in him to help him stand upright. This guy balances okay without a weight in him, but I'm going to put weights in the one that I make today to help him stand up a little bit better. I'm using these little glass pebbles for that purpose. For anyone in Australia, I got these ones here from Bunnings in a sort of a little mesh bag in their landscaping section. For anyone in America, I've also recently found out that these are sometimes in the dollar store, so hopefully that means something to you. You're also going to need your 3.5mm hook, a pair of scissors, and some pins and needles, but that's it. So you could choose to use some wire in your beholder if you wanted to. Today I'm going to be showing you how I used a bit of a sculpting technique to bend all of the little eye stalks in the direction that I wanted them. So I'll be showing you how to do that during the assembly phase. All right, let's get into it.
So I've also opened the vote for the next Not My Idea episode. Go to my channel, on the communities tab you'll see the poll there. As of filming, Pumpkin Turtle is currently in the lead. Voting will still be open for a couple of weeks, so don't worry too much if it's not showing what you want just yet. And there's always the second chance draw, which will be open to my patrons once the main vote closes.
All right, so we work our beholder in 3 kind of main pieces. So those pieces are sort of the head shape, which includes the attached eye. Then we'll have a mouthpiece, which is made all in one piece, including the teeth. You'll be relieved to hear, no sewing involved in getting these guys attached. And then we have our eye stalks, which are one piece that we make 7 times, and you do have to sew those on. So we're going to start with sort of the main head and eyeball piece. And we start in the center of the pupil at the front of the face. Okay, so grab your hook and your black to start with. And we're going to start with a magic ring of 6 stitches. Pull. And then for round 2, we're going to put an increase into each of those stitches. And in the last stitch of row 2, we're going to change to your iris color. This is how I'm going to change colors every time I need to throughout this pattern. So we always change colors in the last stitch before we need to be using our new color. So I'm going to start by inserting my hook through the next stitch, yarning over and pulling up a loop of my current color. I'm then going to hold that out of the way along the hook. I'm going to grab the color I'm changing to, which in this case is my yellow, the iris color. And I'm going to hold that out along the hook as well, pinching it at the back at the base of that stitch so that I'm holding both of them pretty tightly. I'm going to yarn over with that color and pull through both of those loops to complete that single crochet. And then I'm going to give the sort of tails of those 2 colors a little tug to make sure that that stitch is sitting nicely. So from there, you'll be able to see that we have our new color on our hook ready to go. We've worked that stitch completely in black, but the next one will come out completely in yellow. And that's how we do that. I'm then going to trim off the black because we're done with it for this particular piece. And I'm going to tie those 2 tails together just to stop any kind of unraveling or loosening along the way. And I'm just doing a double knot. It's going to be hidden on the inside. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. So there is the back of our color change. There's the front. Okay, so now for the iris, we're going to be working up 2 rows. So row 3 will bring us up to 18 stitches around, and then row 4 will bring us up to 24 stitches around. Now in the last stitch of our iris color, we need to change to our white. So what I'm going to do is, because I completed my row, I'm just going to frog that last stitch and use it to change to our white, just the same way as we changed to our black. Okay, so for row 5, we've got a little bit going on. So first of all, we're going to be working completely in back post. Stitches have 2 loops, a front loop and a back loop that you can work in, but they also have sort of this little stem of a stitch, which is when we insert our hook around the post of the stem from the back of the stitch back to the back of the stitch. Now, by this point, you should be fairly familiar with what's your back side and what's your front side. And back post is when we work around that stem from the back of the piece back to the back of the piece. Then I'm going to sort of yarn over or under and finish off that stitch, just like a normal single crochet. So we're going to do 3 of those to start with, just like that. And what you should be noticing is that it gives you this really nice kind of hard edge between the edge of your iris and the start of the white of your eye. Whereas like you can see where the yellow and the black are meeting, we've got kind of a little bit more of a zigzag. So that's why we're using back post here. So after your 3rd one, what we're going to do is create that catch light. I'm pretty sure that's the right name for it, which is sort of this little white spark that's going to give your eye a little bit more life. So the way we do that, here's one of my practice Eyestalks, is you can see that it's a single crochet, but we've worked it through the middle of the magic ring instead of in the stitch in the previous row. So what that looks like is we're going to skip the next post, and instead I'm going to insert my hook through the middle of that original magic ring. I'm going to yarn over and pull up a long, long loop. So that's what that looks like there. I'm going to yarn over again, and I'm just going to finish off that stitch like a regular single crochet. It's just got a really long loop. So anyone who's done like spike stitch before, I think uses this technique as well. And there is sort of the catch light of this eye, and I find that it gives the eye just a little bit more dimension. You can always, of course, just stitch these on using a needle and some yarn at the end if you're not comfortable doing this particular stitch though. All right, so I'm going to skip one post and keep going until we have done 24 stitches around, including that spike stitch. Just like that. Okay, so now we're just going to work up the next 3 rows in our white. Now you might find that your eye is concaving in on itself a little bit. You can just pop it out so it curves the right way. So that is now the end of the white for this piece. So I am once again going to frog that last stitch that I did, and I'm going to color change to my body color, which for me is going to be this bright fuchsia pink color. And this time we're going to do a row of front post single crochet. So we did back post before to highlight the iris, and now we're going to do front post because we want the eye to sit inside the head or the body. We don't want it to pop out from it, we want it to sit inside it. We're going to be working around the post of the stem again, this time inserting our hook from the front back out to the front. And we're going to do a round of 30 single crochet around the edge of the eye. Now our eye should have 1 row of your main body color around it. We're going to do something that I don't normally do in my patterns, and that is we're going to slip stitch back through that first stitch we did as a front post. Just like that. And the reason we've done that is because we are now going to stop and work up the eyelid so that it's all one piece and we don't have to worry about sewing it on later. Now, if you don't want your piece to have an eyelid, or you would rather make it as a separate piece to sew on later, all you have to do at this point is skip to row 17 and you'll be able to carry on with the rest of the body just without the eyelid being there. Okay, so to work up this eyelid, we're going to start by chaining 12. We're then going to skip the next 11 stitches along the rim of the eye. And this is the 12th stitch there. I'm just going to insert my hook into it, and I'm going to work a single crochet into that stitch. Now, your eyelid should fall just across the edge of the top of your iris, and keep in mind that we want it to sit a little loosely once we're done stitching it so that we can pull it down and form a facial expression. So it shouldn't be sitting tightly, it should be sitting kind of loosely over the top of that eye. So having done that single crochet, I'm going to rotate my piece and working up into one of the stitches we just skipped. So you'll note that this is the chain we just did, the single crochet we put in, and then working back into one of the stitches we just skipped. I'm going to put a slip stitch in there. Just like that. And I should now be in a position to work stitches back along this chain. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to put 12 single crochet back along that chain. And I just want to note that I'm working over the top of that chain, not into the individual chains, because I think it gives you a nicer edge to your eyelid. So that's 12, and this happens to me sometimes where I've got a little bit of extra chain left over after I've done the number of stitches I need. But the beauty of working over the chains is that I can then just grab those stitches and move them along until they fill the whole space. So that's where I am at currently, and I'm once again going to turn this piece, and we're going to work once again into the stitches that we skipped, and I'm going to put a slip stitch into each of the next 2. And what this is doing is anchoring the eyelid down to the eye. So that's 2 slip stitches there, and I'm now going to work 12 single crochet back along the stitches in that chain. So that's 12. So I'm going to turn my work again, and we're going to once again work into the stitches that we skipped at the start. And once again, I'm going to slip stitch into the next 2. And now we're going back to working into the eyelid stitches. So for this row, we're going to be working in the back loops only. So what that means in terms of this piece, just because I sometimes hold my piece a little differently to other people, is we're going to be working on the loops that are closest to the eye, not the ones that are visible from the outside. So just working through one of those loops. We're going to work a single crochet and then a decrease. and we're going to repeat that 3 more times. So if I'm just going to take my hook out at this point just so I can show you. So my eyelid is sticking up, but if I move it downwards, it sits nicely across the curve of that eye. You'll see that we've still got a little bit of a white gap that we're filling in at the moment. And from the back, that's just what that looks like as well. All right, so once again, we're going to turn, work the slip stitches back into the work our slip stitches back into the skipped stitches, and then working back along the eyelid. We're going to work 4 decreases. Now these can be, I'm personally working invisible decreases, but you can work any decreases in these stitches. So end of that row, I'm going to turn, and this time I'm only working 1 slip stitch through the skipped stitches. Just like that. Then I'm going to work 2 decreases back along this eyelid, which is going to start getting a little bit tricky to get into. Like so. Then rotate, and once again we're just putting 1 slip stitch into the skipped stitches. And then we're going to put 1 final decrease. There should only be 2 stitches left in that eyelid. Just like so. And there is your eyelid. So we're actually going to just carry on from this point. So to anyone who skipped the eyelid, this is where you're going to sort of join back up with us. So for the next row, we're going to go back to working in a continuous spiral, and we're going to be working in row 9. So that is the first pink row that we put around the edge of the eye. Now, most of these stitches at the top will have a slip stitch in them already from where we worked the eyelid. So we're going to be working in the post underneath those slip stitches. Working back post, so inserting my hook around the post from the back of the stitch to the back of the stitch. I'm going to put 30 single crochet around, and that's 30. And my piece got a little bit mangled in the process of identifying all of those posts. So I'm just going to pop it all back in the right way. So at this point you should see we've got a really nice clear definition between the iris and the white of the eye, but also a really nice clear definition between the white of the eye and the body colour. So from here we're just going to be working the rest of the rows through both loops to build up the rest of your beholder. And don't forget to put your weights in when you stuff. Okay, so now we have finished off our eyeball there. We're going to pop him to one side and we're going to make the mouth. So the mouth on our beholder is constructed all as one piece. So we start working in the black. We work up most of this sort of black section here. We then do a row where we build out the teeth. We go back to the black and then we build kind of the little cup shape up in purple. So we're going to start by grabbing our black. Just like that. And note that I have not trimmed off my black because we are going to be swapping back to it after one row of our white. So the next 2 rows are a little bit complicated. So first up, we're going to build up our teeth in our white. And to do that, we're going to start by slip stitching into the next 5 stitches. Just like that. So there's our 5 slip stitches. We are then going to chain 5. Now those first 3 should be regular chains that you can work into. So they need to be able to fit your hook into them later. And then the last 2 are going to be pulled very, very tightly. So you've got 3 regular chains and then 2 very tight chains at the top. And we're then going to turn and we're going to skip the 2 tight chains, and in the 3rd chain from our hook, we're going to put a slip stitch. And then we're going to put a single crochet into each of the next 2. So 1 and 2. So there is our first tooth. And now we are working back into the black stitches again, and I'm going to put a slip stitch into each of the next 2. So 1 and 2. And now we're going to work up 2 kind of stumpier teeth. So we've got 1 big tooth here. We're going to do 2 little ones and then 1 big one. So we're doing a smaller tooth now. And I'm going to chain 3. Now all 3 should be regular chains that we can work into. And we're going to turn and working down the chain, starting in our 2nd chain from hook. I'm going to put a slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. So that's all 3 of those chains used now. So we chained 3, turned, and then put 2 slip stitches in. Working back into our black stitches, I'm going to put 2 slip stitches along. Like so. And we're going to do another small tooth again. And we're going to do another big tooth. So chain 5, the first 3 being regular chains, and the last 2 being really tight. Turn and put a slip stitch, then a single crochet, and then another single crochet, leaving us at the base of that tooth. And now we're going to put 9 slip stitches along the next 9 black stitches, which looks just like that. And now we're going to work 4 more teeth exactly the same way as we did the top ones. So we're going to do 1 more big tooth, 2 small ones, and then another big tooth. And with that done, you should have 2 black stitches left. So we're going to slip stitch into the first one, and then in the second one, we are going to change back to our black, which should still be attached. So it's as simple as inserting our hook through the stitch we're slip stitching into, yarning over with our black and pulling it through the stitch and the loop on our hook. So yes, this piece here does turn out looking like teeth in a mouth. And the trick to it is in this next row. So for row 8, the instruction is relatively simple, but the execution is a little bit tricky. And that is that we're going to be working into the stitches of row 6, which is the previous black row. And to do that, what we're going to be doing is inserting our hook around basically through row 6 stitches, but it means that we're going to be working over the top of the white stitches that we slip stitched. So the first 5 are pretty easy because they are just slip stitches, and then we come to our first tooth. So what I'm going to do is move that tooth out of the way and insert my hook into the next stitch that we're working into. You'll note that it looks like it's getting a little tangled up, but as soon as I pull up a loop, I have a bit more control. I give the tooth a tug forward so it's out of the way. And then I finish off my stitch. And that's what that looks like from the top. So stitches 7 and 8 fall on either side of the first smaller tooth. Once again, we're just pushing that tooth forward and out of the way to do our stitch. So for this one here, because it wouldn't push out of the way, I've pulled up my loops in front of the tooth, and then before I finish off that stitch, just pulling that stitch out to the side we want it on. So that's my 19th stitch as I reach the second lot of teeth. My 26th stitch, first stitch after all of the teeth have been done. So 29 is the last stitch that's white because we changed to black in the final stitch of the previous row. And then 30 to get back to the start. And I try to do a count after trickier rows just to make sure that I have the right number of stitches, and I do. So you'll see that doing it that way gives us these 4 kind of, I mean, they're wonky little teeth at this point, but 4 teeth that kind of stand off from their back, and we haven't had to sew 8 little pieces in, which, I mean, to me, that's just a massive win. Okay, and now we're going to do just 1 more row of 30 single crochet around in our black. Just like that. So in that final stitch of my black, I am going to just frog it because I want to change back to my main body color, because now we're going to be working up sort of the lips. So the lips are formed by working 7 rows, 2 of which are worked as back post. They are marked in the pattern notes. So pause here to work up your lips and finish off. So there is our mouthpiece, giving us it's giving me very distinct newt vibes, you know, newt. But what we're going to do is the teeth are all down in there, and we're going to fold this lip over the whole way around until that first row of back row that we did is forming the edge of the lip. And you can just pinch that out as well if that's easier for you than rolling. And then if you like pull the cheeks out, there is the basic shape of your mouth. Note that I'm just giving the black a little bit of a poke to help the teeth poke out, and like once you've straightened those teeth out a little bit, there you go. So you've got your mouth there. Now note that this is the mouth in the neutral position, and that with some posing you can get it to make a snarly shape or a happy smiley face. So that's going to come down to how we sew them on. But for now, we're going to pop the mouthpiece to one side. So the final pieces that we have to make are these little eyeball stalks. And I've made 7 of them for this guy, and I'm going to make 7 of them again, but you can make as many or as few of them as you like. So we're going to start in the center of the iris, and we're actually going to start in our iris color. So for me, that is this yellow. And we're going to start by working up a magic ring of 6. So these eye stalks are worked with a couple of changes between back post and front post, but we've already covered how to do that. So pause here and work up your eye stalk. Okay, so there is our eye stalk, and as mentioned, I'm going to make 7 for mine. So there are my 7 knobbly little eye stalks. Now you can make as many or as few as you like, though I would recommend at least 3, and I would also recommend that you keep it at an odd number because it tends to look a little bit better in my opinion. So what we need to do for each of these now is go in and stitch on a pupil, and I'm also going to show you how to add eyelids if that's something that you're interested in doing. So first up, thread your needle with some of your black. And what we're just going to do is, you can see sort of like the inner circle of these stitches, and then you've got like an outer circle of these stitches, and we're just going to use that as a guide to stitch on some little pupils. So once up until I've got the size that I want, and then I'm going to go work my way down and just fill in any gaps that were left. Then thread back through the eye and out the bottom to hide your end. And then we're just going to do the same thing to the other 6, just like that. Note that some of my pupils are long and some of them are small and round. I genuinely don't think it makes a big difference, but do whatever you feel looks good. Okay, so now that we've put all of our pupils in place, we're going to rethread our needle with a little bit of white, and we're going to add little catch lights to each of them to give them a little bit more dimension. So with the white, I'm going to thread again up through the middle of the eye, and you want to come out roughly through the center of the black. And keeping in mind that for your catch lights, you want them to be glimmering all in the same direction. So for this one here, it's almost straight up. It's pointing basically where the 1 would be on a clock. So I'm going to thread it back out through the white. So it goes over the black and over the yellow, back out the bottom. Just like that. I'm going to do that for all of them again. And now, last but not least, we're going to add eyelids selectively. So I would encourage you to give each of these little eye stalks their own kind of personality, but you can do them all the same as well if you would like. So note on the giant purple one, most of them have no eyelids because there's 7 eyes, guys. Cut me some slack. But some of them have just the top and they've got like a half lid going on, and some of them have a top and a bottom eyelid. So I'm going to show you how I did both of those. He's so cranky. Okay, so to do an upper eyelid, I'm going to insert my needle in the top third of this eye. I'm going to pull it until that end is completely hidden away. Then I'm just going to work loops over the top third of this eye to form the eyelid. And just keep stitching until you have the size eyelid that you're after. Then when you do, thread your needle out and through the bottom and trim off. So there is an example of a top eyelid, and to do the bottom eyelid, you basically just do the same on the bottom. So go along now and add as many or as little or as few eyelids as you like. So as you can see, I've added a top eyelid to 3 of them, but I'm going to leave the rest of them just the way they are. Alrighty, so now we have all of our pieces. The time has come to assemble. So we're going to start with our mouthpiece. So tuck all of those extra edges in. And note what we're going to do is pick whichever side you like the best to be your top. It's a symmetrical piece or a symmetrical enough piece that it shouldn't really matter. Find the center mark, which should be between your 2 front teeth. And we're going to pin that just to the edge of that colored iris. Now I am going to be showing you how to make the cranky facial expression on this, but do keep in mind that you can make your guys smile and be happy, or you can just give him sort of a more neutral gobsmacked expression, but we're going for cranky on this one today. So with that sort of starting point established just below the iris, you can actually just go around and pin the rest of it where it falls against the body, just like that. Then what we're going to do is, we've got our middle line, I'm going to poke that lip up and pin the lip into the black. Then I'm going to take the upper lip, I'm going to fold it up until it meets almost the pupil. Then I'm just going to massage the piece around so that the teeth are sitting nicely. Just like that. Because all of this is going to be sewn on in the same color, I'm inclined to do a lot of it all at once. So the other thing that we're going to do to form this cranky expression is grab the middle of this eyelid, which can be like positioned up for a very surprised look. We have our neutral position, or we can grab the middle of it and pull it down a little bit into a point. I apologize for this, Mr. Beholder, which forms that glare. Grr. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just take a moment to sew these pieces on. So what I'll do is I'm going to stitch along the edge of the eyelid using our main body color and making sure not to stitch out into the white or the yellow so it's visible. I'm then going to stitch around the edge of the mouthpiece before stitching the lip up and the lip up. So we're going to do that now. All right, so now comes the time to position our eye stalks. So as you can see here, how I'm going to be positioning mine is 3 in the front and then 4 in the back, and they're going to be staggered so that you can see all of them looking. And it's kind of a 2-step process to attach these. So basically what you do is you position them all and you sew them on around the base, and then we're going to use a little bit of a trick to direct which direction they're looking in. So I'm going to grab my favorite of my eyes, probably this one here, and I'm going to start by positioning it 2 to 3 rows back from the main eyelid, and I'm going to center it directly above the eye, just like that. So note that it's sticking straight up at the moment, but I don't mind. Okay, I'm then going to pin one on either side, just like that, making sure they're nice and even. So there's my first 3. For my next 2, I'm just going to go straight back between each pair of eyes. Maybe 1 row of stitches clear and free between them, but it doesn't really matter as long as they're all kind of grouped on top of the head. Keeping in mind that your catch light should be at the top of your eye. So because all of my eyes are going to be facing forward, when you look at those eyes, you'll note that the catch light is all roughly in the same position. I mean, I know that you've got eyes to spare right now, but keep half an eye on that. All right, and finally, you should have 2 eyes left, and we're going to put 1 on each side, and I'm going to space them. Note that we've got like our front row and then our back row. I'm going to pop these ones here kind of midway between those, but the same distance down, kind of to sort of bridge the gap between the 2 rows. Okay, and so your eyes should look roughly pretty even there. And when you're happy, we're going to sew around the base of each of them. Okay, so now that they are all attached, they're all passing the tug test, we've tucked in all of our tails. What we're going to do is we're going to bend all of our eye stalks to face, for me they're going to face forward, but you can use this technique to do whatever you like with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert my needle down here. So the catch light is at the top of the eye, and I want to come out still in the pink at the bottom of the eye. So if you don't have a curved needle, using a straight one, you might have to insert your needle down here and do it as a straight line. Because mine's curved, I have to do it over here. So that's the only reason that I'm doing it from off to the side. You can do it from wherever on the face. Kind of want to just fiddle around until your needle is coming out through the base of the eye there. And you're going to want to leave a little tail hanging out. So once you've got your needle up and through, you're going to want to go 1 stitch over, all in the pink so that it's disguised. And you're going to thread your needle back down through the stalk and out roughly the same place. You're going to thread your needle out in the direction you want your eye to be facing. Okay, so here's the tricky part now, right? Ready? So I'm going to pull this, and you note that it curves the eye, and you're just going to make sure it's curving it in the direction you want it to curve. You hold that strand tightly, and you perform a little locking stitch. There we go. And just like that, that eye is now facing forwards. And I'm going to repeat that process on all of the eyes. And there is your finished beholder.
All right, so that's it for this week's pattern. Click here if you're interested in making the mimic, which was the first pattern in this series, or click here if you're interested in seeing a playlist of all of my free patterns in one spot. I'll see you next week with an owlbear. Okay, bye.